Hello there, Docs here again, and welcome back to another Planetside 2 video. I'm going to talk a little bit about dogfighting today, which is something that has been a long time coming. I've been wanting to do a bit more of an advanced video on the mechanics of dogfighting and stuff like that for quite a while. And really what sparked it was actually a thread on Reddit, which was talking about how flying in Planetside 2 isn't really that great. This person doesn't enjoy it, and I can agree with some of the points on there, because in dogfights some of the mechanics I think needs tweaking a little bit. You might notice if you've ever flown a Mosquito and done any dogfighting, you'll probably end up in a bit of a turning competition. It usually ends up with two fighters at low speed just trying to out-turn each other, which is probably one of the most boring parts about flying. It's just partially a matter of luck and a bit of just what fight you're in and how fast you can push your mouse forward. It's not really that great. It doesn't take a lot of thought, and a lot of people seem to just end up doing this and thinking that's all that there is to dogfighting. And as it is now, I definitely think there could be some tweaks done to it. A lot of people have mentioned changing some of the mechanics so that turning isn't always the same speed, depending on what speed you're going, because it doesn't tend to change unless you're using your afterburner. The speed of your turning doesn't tend to change quite as dramatically. So there can be a lot of changes done to that. But today I want to talk about, as it is right now, how you can just get the upper hand. And I talked about this in my original video talking about the controls and stuff like that of the Mosquito, and basically you want to be the one who sees the other person first. That's what I said, and that isn't always going to be the case, but that's usually the best position to be in. You want to be the person who sees the other guy and gets as much fire onto them as possible before they start moving, and that usually means lining yourself up with them before you start firing. You don't want to be firing just randomly pot shots and then informing them that you're heading towards them and they should probably move. No, you want to get right behind them before you do that and start firing then, and get as much off as possible on them, which is why I've taken the cert which increases the magazine size, because you want to just be able to unload as much as possible at once, and it's really great for that. So usually doing this will get the enemy on a low health, but they won't be destroyed outright. It's very rare that happens. It's usually a case of them being AFK or just not being aware of what's going on, or maybe if they're on low health you might get them straight up. But it's a case of finishing them off after that, and then it's just pursuing them. And really, to pursue someone, all you have to do is predict their movements. If they decide to suddenly start to turn, you have to turn as soon as they decide to do that, because you can't wait until you're past them before thinking, oh, I better turn around, because they're going to be off in the other direction already and you're going to lose them. So with that in mind, you'll probably be able to stay behind most people with a bit of practice, and it's just a case of waiting until you get the right shot and finishing them off. So when you're the one who's at the receiving end at something like that, when someone's heading directly for you from behind or above or something like that, or below or wherever, and you need to get out the way and you want to be the one behind them, usually, like I say, it ends up as a turning contest. You just slow down as much as possible. The other guy tries to slow down to keep behind you, and you keep turning and turning and turning. You sometimes might get some shots off at the other guy and they might get some shots off at you, but you're at a disadvantage already because you've probably already taken some hits. So if it's just a matter of taking little shots at a time at each other, then you're going to probably lose for the most part. But the best thing I found is not to engage in that at all. If you get in a position where someone's firing at you, fly off and find some cover. Get behind a mountain or a building or something like that, so you're out of sight of the enemy, because when you're out of sight, then you can do something that is unpredictable, that they aren't going to predict it. If you, say, fly around the side of a mountain, decelerate as quickly as possible and fly over the top of the mountain, or fly back around the same way and fly past them. Now this might not get you right behind them straight away, but it will give you a chance to get some cover and get them in a position where they're confused. Because then when they're confused, they don't know where you are, you're in the same position as they were when they first started attacking you. So it's a great place to be. They're extremely vulnerable and you can just unload onto them. using this tactic might not always get you in a position where you can get behind the enemy or get the upper hand on them, but what it does do is it gets you out of their sight, which is very important when you're being followed by someone, because it's very hard to shake people when you're just flying normally, even if you're just zigzagging between mountains and things like that. Unless you do something unpredictable, it's pretty easy to follow someone like that, so it's definitely something to keep in mind if you're ever being pursued by someone. That being said, this tactic is highly dependent on having actual objects around you and cover from enemies. It's not always the case. The northern area especially is a real pain. When you're being attacked by someone else, there's very little cover. If you're near a base, you maybe will be able to get behind a building. If you're near one of the bigger bases, at least, the smaller ones, there's pretty much no cover because you can't really get behind a building enough so that they can't really see you at all. So you might end up having to join in one of the turning competitions that they have, but I tend to not stick in that for very long if it does happen. If I'm the one with the disadvantage, I tend to pull out of that as quickly as possible while they're still turning, try and get behind them, and in a position where I can try and find some cover somewhere, use my afterburners as much as possible. So to sum everything up, it's probably best to avoid engaging directly in dogfights as much as possible. When you end up in a dogfight, usually that's when it's become a stalemate in a way. One person hasn't just outright killed the other person and you're both battling it out to try and finish things off, and it's difficult to really ensure that you're going to win in any situation like that. So you have to play defensively, get out of the way and move out of the way. If you're not in a situation where you think you are going to definitely get the upper hand and win, then just avoid it. You're in a Mosquito or a Reaver or a Scythe, and these aircraft are just incredibly easy to destroy, so playing defensively is probably the best way to play in these things. If you're going to be really aggressive, flying to areas which are very dangerous or into situations which you aren't going to ensure that you're in a good position, then you're not going to be lasting very long for the most part, unless you're really lucky or you're just really good. So hopefully some of you guys have found this useful, but do bear in mind that you have to pair this with a bit of experience flying in Planetside 2. You need to be used to the controls basically and the handling of these aircraft, because to pull these off sometimes you have to ski along the side of a cliff and things like that, some crazy things, and I tend to crash a lot doing this stuff. I do have a hell of a lot of fun doing it though, so just find what's good for you. If you wanted to play a bit differently, then fine, do that. Remember that this isn't just going to be the perfect way of playing the game. There's different ways of doing it, so really it comes with time and a lot of practice, and I think people tend to form their own style of playing, and it's great. So guys, thank you for watching, and I will see you again very soon with more Planetside 2 and other stuff. Ooh, other stuff. I really don't know what other stuff, but I just thought I'd better put that in there.